Hi, I'm Alexander Davis at HeroicTraining.com. Today I'm going to talk about, my reading of Semper Initiativus Unum by Wayne Rossi at his blog. I have to say, seeing this reinforces a belief I have about the basis for most D&D prior to 2nd edition AD&D. It's post-apocalyptic. Some people don't like that assertion of my opinion and have made the argument that it's really historical fantasy or prehistorical fantasy or alternate universe fantasy or some other sort of explanation, because that's the way it's played or presented in the vast majority of campaigns. I can see some people thinking that way. It starts becoming an issue when people start looking at things closer than it's fantasy. To some people, fantasy implies a historical placement which can be flat out wrong. Here's a short list of things that caused me to look at the whole thing as post-apocalyptic. First off, monks. These are so anachronistic that some GMs disallow them in their campaigns because they have no place in the European fantasy society. I agree. In a strictly historical campaign, they would have no place. But Gary Gygax was certainly skilled enough at the time to where he would not have overlooked such a logical inconsistency if he's presenting a strictly historical campaign. I think he was looking for something else. What? I don't know. Perhaps an open place where anything could go as long as it was overseen and tested. Other points are equipment. There's a reason the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism, has a 900-year range from 600 AD to 1500 AD. The equipment is relatively stable and standardized in the heavy arms and equipment area in the state range and suits well the medieval flavor apparently warranted by players of fantasy RPGs. Examples of straight historical inaccuracies is right in the sword section with the Kopish. It was last used in the 1300 BC, and right next to that is the falchion, a weapon developed in 1300 AD. There's also no guidelines or suggestions for correcting this oversight of including items of millennia apart in creation and use. Also in the equipment is joystick and bowstick, which are two Asian weapons, at least in name, included in the weapons list. Making a showing in a list that has staves and clubs, it seems extraneous to add more weapons into lists that are already covered by other weapons. You could just put, liner notes underneath weapons saying, here's a staff, you can use it as a bow stick, you can use it as, this, that, and the other. Same thing with things like you could do, here's a club, you can use it as a joystick, you can use it as a, counting coup stick, anything like that. Great. Perhaps the argument about Gary Gygax's near fanaticism about polearms could be extended to weapons in general, but it just doesn't really match. Other items include like Appendix N, and it does have fantasy set in prehistorical, real historical, and post-apocalyptic settings in the books listed. Many spells actually come from across as super science in some ways. Things like the Ray of Enfeeblement would be an example. Magic items such as Yun stones, which according to the original story were harvested by digging for them in a dead star that gets sheared partially by the edge of the universe. The Council of Eight was inspired by Jack Vance's stories, which are far more post-apocalyptic than not. Dragon Magazine also published things, especially in the early run, that were either gonzo or more proof that things were not straight historical fantasy. Look up the Recyclosaurus. And you can also note that many of a mage written about in those pages was smoking cigars, which did not hit Europe until the New World was discovered. Heck, the fact so much of was based on what turns out to be called gonzo elements, which is now derived by many who seem to aim for historical accuracy, it has to be eliminated for historical accuracy reasons. Other sources include deities and demigods, and it's not quite a part of the big three really needed for AD&D gameplay, PHB, DMG, and in Monster Manual, but it certainly predates much else and has plenty to do with the early campaigns. This book has so much inside, new monsters, magic items, etc., and it can help differentiate between a Japanese samurai and a tribal Central American warrior, both of whom are of the fighter class, at first. Eventually, finding treasures in the dungeon would force a homogeneous appearance, which can spoil the effect. Perhaps a house rule of magical items, including arms and armor, takes on the appearance of the character's mythos, no matter the rule setting device elsewhere. Thus, the Shoshone fighter could have the stats of field plate while keeping his preferred fringed and beaded buskins. Might work. We also have things out of the monster manual. And there are things that are decidedly magical, such as the Beholder's an alien, the Bulette, the Rust Monster, Illithids, Doppelgangers. All these are more easily explained by being alien than magic, even when Arthur C. Clarke's rule of science and magic is applied. Then look at the section on dinosaurs. Does not fit inside the historical accuracy box. Cavemen, Neanderthals, Irish elk, most recently carbon dated as 7,700 years ago. Even the myths are hodgepodge, such as the Petrion, which is a Roman myth, which doesn't really appear in deities and demigods except as a footnote to the Greek gods. I could go on, but however it unfolds in the end, just because people want to squish things inside a little box, ignore all the signs that point to something bigger that may have been outside the real grasp but not reach, or the predecessor of many more historically accurate games, does not make the game inside the box without cutting away too much. A version of historical accuracy is within our reach, but not our true grasp even. But as history marches on, and so too do discoveries of and challenges to previous understandings of any simulation, even for joy, becomes more inaccurate. So take it as it is. A game for romping doesn't need to be accurate, and the shelf life becomes incredibly much larger and longer than any of the historical accuracy games. Meanwhile, does anyone see my copy of Deities and Demigods or my Oriental Adventures? Darn things might have disappeared in the move. Well, I'm Alexander Davis for HeroicJourney.com, and if you guys could give me a like and subscribe, comment, post, share, whatever you can do, subscribe, I'd love it. And I want you to be the best role player you can be, even if you're not historically accurate.